Great salespeople are not born, they are built. One conversation, one rejection, and one breakthrough at a time. Hello and welcome to Cross That Bridge. Today, we have someone who has truly shaped the Indian IT industry, Mr. Manoj Chugh. From the dawn of the internet to leading India's charge into AI, he's been at the forefront of policy, technology, and transformation. Manoj shares powerful lessons that have created billions in revenue and made a real impact on India's growth story. If IT sales was a sport, he'd be the Kapil Dev, leading from the front and inspiring generations. So stay tuned till the very end. This one's a true masterclass you won't find in any university. The lessons come from the real world experience built on blood, sweat, and tears. And they are just as relevant for early learners as they are for seasoned leaders and entrepreneurs. Let's dive into the Cross That Bridge.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I'm so honored to be here with you.
Sir, I've known you enough that you're one of the leaders in sales. You have inspired generations. So my first question to you would be, if sales was a sport, you would have played it the test cricket way. Now, what inspired you to be in the sales in the first place? And how did you develop your philosophy along the way?
Well, Gurpreet, I don't know whether I would have been a test cricketer or T20 or a one-day player. I guess in sales, you have to learn to play all formats. And again, thank you very much for your very kind words. I know I often kind of introspect and ask myself the question that how did I get into sales and what motivated me? And I think like for many of us as professionals, your inner calling pushes you and pulls you in a certain direction. And I think sales for me was always my inner calling. In fact, when I was in college and a lot of my relatives would ask me, I did engineering, that what are you going to do? And they hoped that I would give a response saying, well, of course, I'll go and to manufacturing sector and do engineering work or whatever. And I would tell them that I want to go and do sales. And they would say, what? Why are you doing engineering if ultimately you're going to land up selling soaps and detergents? But it was my inner calling.
I went through a very similar phase myself. I'm a computer engineer. When I joined the corporate, my concept of getting employed was a software programmer after a computer engineering. Then by luck and with the help of a mentor, I was given an opportunity to be a part of the sales team. And the concept I had back then in year 2000, it was detergents and door knocking through the detergent salespeople, right? So there was not so great concept of sales, and now it has just changed altogether. And we now know how important sales is to any business per se.
Absolutely.
So on that note, give us a little bit of a perspective. If you were to coach someone who's starting sales in this AI era, what would be those basic skills you would like them to cultivate?
I would say that if you look at anyone who's followed a sales career, there are a few themes, there are a few mantras which are foundational, which are very critical. And in my own terms, based on my own experience, I define them as the 5C framework. And the 5C framework is very, very simple. It begins with number one, curiosity. I think anyone in sales must have huge hunger to understand the customer's problem. I think many times we try and jump to a solution or a product without really having the curiosity to understand the customer or their business. So curiosity is the first C of what I call this 5C framework. Now, the 5C framework I created not because my name begins with C, but they all happen to be real C's, so it's not like made up. The second C is credibility. Building trust. How do you build trust? You build trust by making sure that you have great competence in the area which you are engaging with the customer in, and importantly, you are consistent. You're not telling different stories on different days. The third, and Gurpreet, you know this very well as an accomplished sales professional, is communicate. How do you make sure that you are able to build a network with whom you can communicate on an ongoing basis? And in a way, a lot of people talk about it as emotional intelligence. The fourth C is something which all of us as sales guys go through. We don't talk about it openly, but really, I think this is the crux of selling: having courage. The courage to face failure. You know, we never win every deal, but do you wake up next day in the morning with enthusiasm that I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make it happen? The fear of failure, the courage to face up to it, the risks that you have in a sales career. You don't do your numbers for 1 or 2 quarters, you know that you're at absolute risk in the third quarter. And importantly, how do you make sure that you've got courage to go out there and every day face the pressures of sales? Sales is not for the faint hearted. And my last C is about how do you make sure that you continuously learn? How do you keep yourself updated? You will be handling different markets, different products, different technologies. One decade to the other, sales, the rhythm is going to be entirely different. And therefore, you need to be learning continuously. So these are the 5C mantras. My belief, Gurpreet, is that sales is a very noble profession. I say it is a noble profession because this is a profession which is rooted in purpose. Our purpose is very simple as sales guys. How do you take society? How do you take your customers? How do you take the ecosystem and stakeholders around you from where they are today to where they aspire to be? We are that bridge which takes people to that aspiration. And in fact, when we are selling, we must remember that there's a whole lot of learning that we do as professionals as well. And our learning is rooted in higher human order values. People always look at sales guys as, oh, flippant guys trying to push and nudge and persuade me to buy something I don't want. That is not true. The higher order learning that salespeople have through their career are about true values of empathy, true values of integrity, true values of progress, true values of how do I make sure that I'm moving the needle, and true values about how do I make this planet a better place. So I think salespeople, when you kind of look at the ingredients of their success, look at their fundamental behaviors that they have to exhibit in order to succeed, and the tremendous learnings that they have, I think is phenomenal. In fact, one of the things that sales guys always learn, if nothing else, is gratitude. Because when you win a deal, frankly, Gurpreet, no salesperson knows why they have won the deal. And likewise, when they lose the deal, they don't know why they've lost it.
How do you overcome from the setback of a lost deal, which I've seen in my sales career and with my other peers as well? A rejection happen or a sales deal is lost or a career breakthrough doesn't go through, we take it too emotionally and too personally. And I think the idea is to get out of it very quickly so that you can be back to your next business opportunity. How do you mentally condition yourself to do it? What has been your mantra?
Well, Gurpreet, there are two kinds of people. One set of people is they lose a deal, they don't tell nobody. They kind of go silent. They just hope that it doesn't come up in the next sales review. They just hope that their manager's forgotten that the opportunity exists. And over a period of time, they will overcome it. The second set of people who are very open, who are very vocal. They are the guys who come to their peers and their friends and use them as a therapist. And I think it's very important that when one loses a deal, to come in and really share very openly with the team, and then sit with the team and analyze with them as to what could have gone wrong, as to why they lost the deal. There is no shame in going in front of your manager, telling your manager, look, I did everything, but I still couldn't win the deal. But I'd like to really sit down and brainstorm and go back and replay that. Not replay that to hurt yourself more, but to learn and make sure so that next time you become better and better. In fact, one of my very interesting learnings, Gurpreet, goes back to early years of selling. when I remembered that a colleague of mine lost a very large deal. In fact, that deal was a make or break, just not for him, but for our entire region. There are always those mega deals. If the deal comes, you know that as a team, at least you've crossed the chasm. Yeah, as individuals, you have to still work on it. Now, this was that big deal which would have made our region look like a hero. I remember he walked into the office. Our manager was, in those days, we didn't have air conditioning in our offices, and our manager would come in the morning and open the windows. We were on a high floor, so at least we get a nice cool breeze. And my colleague went up to our manager and said that, sir, I have some very bad news to share. Our manager said, yeah, please continue. And he kept opening the windows. There are many windows in our office. And he said, well, that big deal that I was fighting for, there were multiple systems, and unfortunately, we've lost it to our competitor. Now, we were all sitting there. We had come in early in the morning, like in the old days, sales guys would do. You need to prep up for the day. And I was thinking in my head, this guy had it. The boss is going to have a terrible mood through the day, and we are now going to see a barrage of expletives coming his way. None of that happened. Our manager continued to open the windows, called him near the window and said, can you come and stand next to me near the window? I said, my gosh, he's now going to push him out from this 20 whatever floors down. He did none of that. And he said, can you look up and can you see the sky? And he said, of course I can see the sky. So he says, so you mean to tell me that the sky has not fallen? He said, no, of course the sky has not fallen. Then he said, please go start working on the next deal. That's it. And that remained with me. I said, what a profound way of managing such a difficult situation and news for the business. And so when something really bad happens, when deals don't go your way, and they're not gone my way, I've always told myself, Gurpreet, look up, the sky has not fallen, let's move to the next one. So don't worry. We will figure out, we will analyze, we'll ask the customer for a debrief. If we don't get one, we'll work with our teammates and take the learnings. And I think it is very important to celebrate your losses, because the learnings you get from your losses are far more than the learnings you get from your wins.
Interesting. Celebrate your losses.
As much as you can.
And what about wins?
Wins, of course, you don't have to tell anyone, right? When you win a deal, before you come to the office, 20 guys have already laid claim to victory. So you know that one deal has many fathers. But that's good. It's always about teamwork. So let the team celebrate.
And when you are leading a team in a typical situation or scenario just shared, how do you spot your sales superstar? You know that this guy will have it all covered and the other guy needs some help. How do you spot? What are the qualities you look for that salesperson?
I think through the process of just sitting with the salesperson and reviewing their territory, it is very, very evident in terms of who's the salesperson who really understands stuff and who doesn't. And of course, Gurpreet, I know that you wanted to talk about a very infamous practice that I started in the industry on commit calls. So if a guy is missing commits regularly, then you know that something's not right in the sales process. It's not that the salesperson is not good or bad. It's just that maybe they need a little bit more of help around tutoring, around judgment, and so on. Because one of the classic characteristics every salesperson has, good or bad, is optimism. And many times salespeople go more by optimism rather than evidence. Selling is a hard science, just as it is an art. But the art part of selling cannot help you succeed unless you get the science right. So the commit process is actually a part of the science, but you need the art to be able to commit accurately. So I think just a simple process of watching the salesperson, even if you've never evaluated, never gone on a sales call, never sat down and done a deep dive discussion, dialogue, reviewed accounts, and so on and so forth, just through a simple commit process in 3 weeks, you will get to know whether this person is worth his salt or her salt or not. And if they are not, as the leader, it is your job to make sure that you help them become better and better.
So there was, you rightly mentioned, there was famous or not so, or infamous, I would rather say. Uh, Somebody said that it feels like death by 1,000 cuts, facing Manoj in a commit call. And again, it's not one or two people, it's just the entire industry perception. Why did that commit call had to be that tough?
At the end of the day, Gurpreet, a salesperson is known by trust. Trust is built based on professional integrity. A measure of professional integrity is that you will do what you say. So if you come in during your weekly sales review meeting and say that this deal is going to come in, then I'm trusting you. I'm trusting your professional integrity that come hail, sunshine, storm, that deal will come in. Or if you turn around and say, the deal is in strong upside, and then at the end of the week you turn around and say that the deal has vanished, then what am I supposed to make out of the sales professional? So I think as professionals, we have to make sure that we can be trusted. We do what we say. And the whole commit process was about that. And I used to tell people, I want to take my commit sheet to the bank and tell the bank that I don't have assets based on which I can give you collateral and you can give me a loan, but I have my commit sheet. This is as good as gold. If I am telling you that on Friday, I'm going to get business in to the tune of $1 million, the $1 million is going to be in. So give me a loan based on my commit sheet as a collateral. And that's what I would tell sales guys. Is your commit a collateral I can take to the bank? If the answer is no, then we need to introspect and improve as salespeople. That means that the science that we are actually following has still not been perfected. We need to work harder on that part of the journey.
So your emphasis was always on the science part of the person. There was always a matter of you coaching people to make sure they understand the science better.
The science is important. The deal will only be won if you're able to layer the science with human intelligence, human emotion, and empathy. But science is fundamental, and then you layer the rest around the science. The science alone will not help you to win, just as your own emotion, your ability to build very good connections, human relationships, networks alone is not enough to get you business.
So Manoj, very well articulated this point. From a management standpoint, when you're working through this process of building science with a professional, a sales professional, when do you decide that this professional or this salesperson is worth investing more in, or we rather move into another business unit or help him with another career opportunity? He's not cut for this. What would be the signs of that?
Of doing, I think it's a fantastic question, Gurpreet. I would say before we get to that step, as a leader, you have to do a few fundamental things. The foundations are critical. And the foundations are relating to institutionalizing the sales process. I find in many organizations that is not there. The definitions are unclear. A simple thing like we just spoke about. What is a commit? What is a deal which is in strong upside? What is a deal that we are calling as upside? Which stage of the sales cycle is the opportunity in? Are we shortlisted? Easy to answer. Are we in the final shortlist? A little more difficult to answer. Are we 80% there or 70% there or 60% there? Very difficult to answer. Now you start coming to judgment. So setting the process is very important. Institutionalizing that process is very important. Now many people come and tell me, Gurpreet, oh, we've got a CRM. So just because you've gone and invested in a CRM doesn't mean that you have institutionalized a sales process. Does everyone understand the language? Are we all singing from the same hymn book? Importantly, the CRM will tell you which opportunity is where. So you know the what. But the how part, how are you going to bring the deal in? Is your organization following a robust sales framework? Are you doing it in a repeatable fashion? Have you built a cadence around it? How rigorous is that specific framework itself? So, give you an example. You and I are very familiar with enterprise sales. Enterprise sales is very complex. It is hyper competitive. You will agree with me, right? I'm sure every opportunity that you're fighting, you must be thinking, I need 5 Kirpans to go and fight this battle. I can't do it alone. So it is multi-stakeholder, layers of stakeholders, and particularly in countries like India, which as it is have more stakeholders than you want to even desire to be able to map and address to bring a deal home. And then you've got more competitors than what you want to deal with. So if your sales framework is not robust enough, it is going to be very difficult for us to even help a good sales guy to win. So step one is institutionalize the sales process. Choose a sales framework which is based on decades and decades of experience in complex, multi-stakeholder, hyper-competitive environments. In fact, there is a sales framework, and I'm happy to share my secret sauce with you.
Yeah, please.
I've never shared this. There's a sales framework that I have, which is around what I call the 10 forces. I spoke about my 5C framework, right? When it comes to ingredients for success of a salesperson. Now you can imagine, for a salesperson, I have got a framework of 5, but for a deal, for an opportunity, I have created a framework which deals with 10 forces that come into play when you are addressing a customer's requirements, starting from macro environmental issues, which in today's day and age, when I started my career, we never even thought about it. But today, everyone talks of geopolitics, geoeconomics. How many of us really sit down and say, what is the impact of that on my customer? We turn around and say, that's great talk for policymakers, for politicians and all that. But my customer is selling pens and needles. Of course, it's going to have an impact, right? Suppose my product has rare earth elements. There's going to be an absolute impact of geoeconomics, geopolitics on the business, whether I like it or not. So starting with that and then going right around the entire sales process, looking at competition, and then really looking at the stakeholders. Multiple stakeholders are there. Which ones are more important? Which are less? What are the hot buttons? The hot button for Gurpreet may be different from Manoj. Both of us may be important stakeholders in that decision. The language that the vendor has to speak to you is different as compared to what they need to speak to me. The deal is the same. So what I'm trying to say, it's very, very complex. And getting these frameworks right is incredibly important. Again, for any of your listeners who'd like to understand more about the framework, happy to share offline. But it's taken a long, long time to kind of get here, if you will.
Talking of frameworks, Manoj, these days in the wider Asia Pacific market, we use MEDDIC as a framework. What's your take on that?
Well, there are many, many frameworks, and every framework addresses a very specific aspect of sales, and it does it incredibly well. I realized, frankly, that for hyper-competitive markets where you have multiple stakeholders, particularly if they're complex B2B enterprise kind of deals and opportunities, I'd rather use my own framework. And the reason why I say this is because when you look at the digital age and you start looking at AI and the impact that AI can help and create and support, the frameworks need to be very different. Also, as I said just a minute ago, when you start talking of externalities, the frameworks that were built in the past did not cater to externalities because it was not required. All these changes that we are seeing have happened literally in real time over the last 8, 9, 10, 12 months. So I prefer to use my own framework. So for organizations that I advise, that I work with, I'm on the boards of, I always insist that they use a framework which is very proven, a framework which can help them win and which can help them to take their deals a long way forward. So I have great respect for all the frameworks. They have got us to where we are today. But I think for the future, a different framework is needed.
No, that's great. Talking of managing sales teams here, if I may ask, how many people have you managed in your lifetime in terms of what is the maximum number of people you have managed in one organization at one point in time?
Well, I've managed many people, and it's just not sales teams, it's broader teams as well. So they run into many thousands, I would say. But in terms of core sales, at a single point in time, I would have managed a team of about 300 to 500 salespeople, depending on the quarter, as you know.
So let me ask you another question here. What will be the signs you will be looking for your next sales leader? What would you, because at any point of time, a salesperson looking for a growth has two options. One is to look externally or look for an internal growth. What are the ingredients you will look for a person that you will spot, or there's my next leader? What are the qualities you're looking for?
No, I think very good. I think first to answer your question on external versus internal, my thumb rule has been that if I believe that somebody is ready 70%, I'd rather give the opportunity to an internal candidate rather than an external candidate. Because I certainly believe that if there is a candidate who understands the organization, people, culture, product, technology, solution, and all the rest of it, then that certainly is a big benefit because that person can then get off the ground, very quickly. In my career, I have most of the time, not always, chosen to work with the existing teams that are. That means that if I leave, my preference always has been that my successor should be from the team that I have led. Doesn't happen all the time, but that is like what you could say my personal unstated goal. I feel that if I've achieved that, then I've done something good. Now, what is it that I look for in a leader? Number one, I look for focus. Absolute relentless focus on results. If a person is not results oriented, we're not going to be able to succeed as a team. Number two, I look for a person who can communicate well. Because if you can communicate the goals to the team and what you want to achieve together, and everyone is aligned with you and your communication is clear, then you're going to be home pretty good and pretty quick. The third thing that I look for is empathy. Because when you work in a team, there are many times when you could have people who are not performing well but who are fundamentally very good. Do you come across and work as a good human being in situations like this? And I'll tell you a story about this from my own career, which I learned in the early years. And what I look for very importantly is hunger in the belly. And last but not least of all, professional integrity. That is super critical. You don't have hunger in the belly, you don't have professional integrity, you don't have empathy, you do not care, and you don't have focus on delivering results, they're not the right person. You have to have these, you may have them in different measure. Some people are more focused than others, some people are more hungry than others, some people are more empathetic than others, but integrity is critical. Right? You can't compromise on that at all. Empathy is super important when you have to lead a team. And as I said, focus, because at the end of the day, the team has to deliver results. Some individuals may, some individuals may not. But overall as a team, you need to be able to motivate the troops to go all in and make it happen. And people always look at the body language of the leader, Gurpreet. Believe me, many times I've got into businesses where we've been in the doghouse. And the confidence that I've given to the team, they're going to make it, we're going to make it big, we're going to become leaders in the market, I think gave them the confidence that, look, this guy must be knowing something that we don't know, or he's seeing something that we are not seeing. So let's go along with him, let's trust him. Let us take his dream and make it 100x. That's what you want, isn't it? As an entrepreneur, when you're running a business, isn't that what you want? So it's a culture part which the leader has to build, which comes from all of the things that I've just spoken about.
Manoj, you mentioned communication. Communication means different things to different people. Can you elaborate a little bit more about how can a leader or a potential leader build a better communication strategy or style?
It's a philosophical answer I'm going to give you,
for
Gurpreet,
sure.
right? It's got nothing to do with people who are experts in teaching communication skills. There are three important elements to communication: what you're thinking, what you're saying, and what you're doing. If all of these three are aligned, you're communicating well. It's not about the language, not about the grammar, it's not about the diction, it's not about the accent. The problem that happens many times is leaders say something, the team sees them doing something else, and the leader is actually thinking a third thing and sharing that with another bunch of stakeholders. And that is where the whole communication breaks down. I have seen many articulate leaders turn around and exhorting their teams to go work 18 hours a day when they themselves, and I've got nothing against people who play golf, but they themselves are playing golf 5 days a week. Now, if you can play golf and you can work 18 hours a day, fantastic, by all means, go do it. But don't go and tell the team, let's go all out, let's work 18 hours, we can make it happen. And the moment you're out of the room, you go and book your next tee off time. So it is very, very important that when you start talking about communication, the team must see you act what you're asking the team. Gurpreet, believe me, I have never asked anyone on my team to do something which either I have not done or I will not do. And the teams that have worked with me over the last more than 40 years, know of this. That if Manoj has said, do this, he's the guy who's going to do it harder than us, he's the guy who's going to do it more than us, or he's someone who has already done this, and therefore he's going and asking me to do this. In the height of the militancy that we had in our country, here in India, in Srinagar, when no sales guys had the gall to go into Srinagar and sell because there was real danger to that individual's life. I can tell you, Gurpreet, my wife doesn't know that I traveled to Srinagar in those years. And I would go and tell her that I'm going to Jaipur, here, there, somewhere else. And because the team saw me traveling into those areas, they got the confidence that they could do it too. So you have to have the courage of conviction and you have to lead by example. It is then and only then the team gets confidence. And then from amongst the people that you have in your team, there will always be some who will imbibe some of these best practices. And then you will turn around and say that I think here is the person who could perhaps be the next leader who could take the business to that next level.
On that note, Manoj, there's a saying called you sow a habit, you reap a character. You sow a character, you reap a destiny. What, according to you, are the habits of a good leader that can help him build a resilient organization?
No, I think it's a phenomenal question. I would say that the leader needs to look at himself as the conductor of an orchestra, which means that the leader may or may not know every role in the organization or may have run every role in the organization, but knows how to make sure that everyone can play to the same tune. Not only play to the same tune, but play to a rhythm. And importantly, play to a tempo. And last but not least of all, play to the same audience. Many times I find there are leaders who are going and telling 5 different people to go and do 5 different things, which are not aligned in the direction of either customer success or shareholder success or success of employees. So we have to remember that we are playing the orchestra to a specific audience. We need to make sure everyone does their part. We need to conduct it in a fashion so that we all play to the same tune at the right rhythm and at the right tempo. And I think that is the fundamental role that I see of a leader.
So Manoj, on that note, a lot depends upon the mindset and the thought leadership of a leader himself, the way he's thinking. How do you manage your internal self-talk in the moments of hard times, when things are not going in the direction you anticipated to go, be it a quarter, be it a market situation. The Titanic seems to be sinking. How do you manage the ship then?
I think it's true for entrepreneurs as well, right?
Absolutely.
Leading through uncertainty, and you know this better than anybody. And you and I were talking right prior to this podcast, and you gave me this wonderful analogy of climbing up Mount Everest. And it is indeed so, right? Every hour the weather is going to change. And then how do you make sure that number one, you are prepared for the weather, which is going to change? And how do you make sure that you've got yourself physically ready, for that difficult climb? I think the same applies, in the case of leadership, in the case of business as well, that we need to make sure that we are prepared for the worst. And bad things happen, they will always happen. My view of life is stay on strategy. Many times I find people get panic, they get very worried that things are not going right, maybe my strategy was wrong. The strategy is always right. Just have to stay the strategy. You may have to hunker down, you may have to fine tune a few things here or there, but continue to plow the field and you will see success. So believe in yourself. Why do you have self-doubt? Your stuff will happen. You're on Mount Everest. Stuff is supposed to happen. Imagine if a fellow like me who's so unfit can just waltz up Mount Everest. Then there's no Mount Everest, right? It's not possible, right? So I think it's incredibly important. We're on the journey. We know this is the path. We know this is what we need to do. Stuff will happen on the way. Stay the course. You might change the acceleration a little bit. You might have to pat a few brakes. That's okay. But don't change direction. Continue to move forward. And I've seen people who've stayed the course have won, always.
Fantastic, Manoj. I think that's been one of the hallmarks of your success as well. Manoj, we know you have had such a glorifying career. You've been one of the hallmarks of IT sales leader in India. Has there been any low moments in your journey as far as career goes?
Yeah, Gurpreet, that's the interesting thing about life. Life is about ups and downs. Life is about ebbs and flows. Life is about opportunities. Life is about challenges. Life is about regrets. And life is about moments of celebration. So I think each one of us, and I'm no different, we've gone through our low times and low moments as well, for sure. And I'm as human as anybody else. My reactions, my emotions were perhaps just the same as it would be for anyone who's gone through or going through that specific moment.
So can you share a moment where you felt like this career is falling apart and how you rebuild yourself from there?
It's very interesting. There was a point in time when there were some differences of opinion and I had to step out of a role. And it was a very difficult moment for me because fortunately performance was never an issue when it came to my career. But sometimes there are philosophical differences. And you have to accept that in life. Life is not always about, if you keep performing, you're going to continue to rise and rise. There are many other factors which come into play. And what I have always done, frankly, and I've had more than one low moment, Gurpreet, is that I've come and I have spoken very openly to my family. So in those low moments, what I have always attempted to do is to be very open with my spouse and my daughter. We're a small family. And so I've come home and I've said, look, this is what has happened. And I think their support and their motivation, their emotional anchoring was super critical to my ability to bounce back. So I think if you have a trusting relationship with your life partner, that can be a very important anchor, which helps you to regain and then to rise again. And I think I've been very blessed and fortunate in that specific request and that specific aspect.
So in your span of lasting 4 decades, Have you ever burned any bridges with people?
Gurpreet, I've never burnt bridges with anyone. I may have been incredibly unhappy with situations. I would have been very unhappy with moments, with people, their behavior. But I've never burnt bridges. And the reason is we live in a small world, and whatever goes around comes around. So burning bridges is never the best idea. It's better to respectfully just bow or respectfully step back and take another direction, move into a different career, move into another organization, move into another role, but never bring things down to a situation where you have a shouting match, or you make your angst very public, or you make your anger public, or you make your unhappiness public. I've never ever done that. I've been very, very respectful of all the relationships. I may have been very unhappy with some of them at some points in time, but I've always respected them. And whenever those people have called me, I have always responded to them as if nothing ever has happened. So that's been just my personal view of life.
And what if any, like you mentioned about people throwing antics sometimes in corporate sales when they lose a deal or they're going through a tough time in their careers, you probably have had people where you manage them not at the first degree but second or third degree. How did you manage such emotional people during the course of your career?
Well, I want to tell you an interesting story, and it's related to what you're saying, but I was in a very different configuration. So the story when I was about to get transferred to a new location many years ago, and that had been a great year for me from a sales perspective. So we were at the half year mark, and I had done my numbers for the year. Now, when you've done your numbers for the year, you walk around with a swag. I've done it, I've made it, you're smug, I got half a year ahead. And I had requested for the transfer. The firm was kind enough, they agreed. And I was moving at that point in time from one region to the other. And I went and met my manager, and I wanted to do the transition of my accounts, just as any good sales guy would do. So as I sat down with him and said, boss, you know that I'm now getting transferred. Thank you very much for your support. I just want to make sure the accounts are transitioned well. My customers are well taken care of as I move on. So what is your recommendation? What should I do? And he said, yeah, Manoj, here's another colleague of yours who's going to take on your territory. He was a personal dear friend of mine. And he said, are you happy he's going to take on your territory? I said, of course. He's such a great friend of mine. What better for me that my territory is now going to be looked after for somebody with whom I was very, very close personally, just not professionally. And he said, and by the way, 50% of the quota achievement also you have to transfer to him. All right. Now, he was a great friend of mine, but as a sales guy, I was not willing to give 50% of my achievement. I said, why should I give 50% when I have gone and won the deals? And he said, listen, you agreed that you wanted your customers to get well taken care of. I said, yes, I stand by that. So he's going to take good care of your customers. I said, of course, but all the follow-on business is what he's going to get, isn't it? I'm not here. I'm not going to get the repeat orders. I'm not going to get the upgrades. I'm not going to get the new business. I am giving him fantastic set of accounts on which he can grow his business over the next 5 years. And he said, no, you will have to give 50% of your achievement to this guy. I fought a lot with my boss. I was very unhappy. I never burned bridges. I was unhappy. I made my unhappiness. I'm a sales guy. Someone's taking 50% of your credit. You're not going to take it lying down. Neither did I. And then after I stormed out of his office, half an hour later, he called me in. And he said, look, I know you're unhappy, but I want you to know the reason as to why I'm doing it. And he then shared something very personal with me, which stuck with me for life. He said, your friend is going through a very deep personal crisis. He said, do you know that? I said, I know something about it, but I don't know exactly. Because you don't want to pry into someone's private life. He said, do you believe he's a good guy? I said, I absolutely believe he's a great guy. And he says that this is going to be a tough year for him personally. Don't you think you need to do something to help him? I said, I like to do anything. So he says, I'm just asking you to give 50%, not 100% of your achievement. Is that too big a thing? What do you think happened? I just stepped back and I said, absolutely fine. Let's go do it. He said, you agreed he's a good guy. You agreed that your accounts are safe in his hands. He is going through a personal crisis. Now we have two options. He's not going to make his numbers. If you give him 50% of your achievement, he'll make his numbers. Or at the end of the year, we'll have to tell him to go. What would you prefer? Because of course I don't want him to go. I know he's a great guy. So that was a very big learning for me in terms of my growth as an individual, on the importance of empathy. And in later years in my life as a leader, these situations came many times in front of me. When I found that people would come to me, talk personally about certain crises they are going through. And my response was what I had learned. I would get the entire team in the room and say, look, I have two options. Either we ask this gentleman to go, I would say it in front of him, or if each one of us is willing to take a bit of the load, I give him a sabbatical, he comes back 6 months later, and we are back as a team. What would you like to choose? And I did it with global teams. And inevitably, the answer I got was, we will take on a little bit more of the load. Let him go back, sort out his personal thing, come back 6 months from now. But Manoj, if he doesn't come in 6 months, then of course we need to look for a replacement. I said, yes. Because at the end of the day, I can ask you to stretch so much and no more. So I think as a leader, you have to look at many, many things. It's not just about being hard on a commit call. It's not just death by 1,000 cuts week after week, which you said a lot of people accuse me of, not wrongly, not wrongly. But at the same time, as a leader, you need to be empathetic. And I look at my leader in that fashion. I might come across externally as very aggressive, as difficult, as tough. But I think internally, I've learned my lessons. I've grown in my life to understand the value of human support, of human existence, of what human beings are capable of doing, and importantly, of their capability, and the fact that they can be trusted.
Great. Manoj, in life and in career, losses are inevitable. How do you overcome some setbacks, including these redundancies happening a lot these days? How do you structure that in your mind, and how do you build resilience around those situations in life?
I think every challenge is an opportunity. And a lot of friends come to me, talking about the fact that they believe they've been made redundant because they've crossed a certain age threshold, or something politically has happened, or the business has got restructured, and so on and so forth. These are realities. And I think in the day and age of AI, every organization needs to rethink the fundamental reason for their existence. So, these redundancies are bound to happen, not because of the individual not contributing, but just because of what's happening around us. I think as individual professionals, this is a great opportunity for us to really do a self-assessment. And when I say a self-assessment, I mean a critical self-assessment, doing it in a scientific fashion. Take a blank piece of paper, write down on one side, what are the true capabilities that you have? What are the skills that you have? What is so unique about you? And on the other hand, write down how can these skills be truly leveraged and used. I think once you have this inventory where you turn around and say, look, I'm very good as a solution architect around infrastructure, IT infrastructure, or I'm a great solution architect around applications in the financial services sector, particularly around credit risk, et cetera, et cetera. I think once you kind of make that inventory, on the other hand, you write down what is the best way of leveraging or utilizing that skill. You might come across some very interesting new opportunities, which may not have cropped your way all this while, because you were following this unidirectional approach to your career, where you said, look, I'm a general manager here, and now I need to become a VP somewhere, and then you kind of keep moving along a linear scale and along a linear career. I think today the opportunities are immense. They are myriad, they're very different. I'm finding that a lot of people are actually turning around today and saying that I'd like one base career and do 2 or 3 things which motivate me. And therefore, the next jump that they look at is not something which pays them as much as what they were paid till the organization said goodbye to them, but they take something much more modest, which they are bound to get because just of the capability and the areas where they have strength, and then do 2 or 3 other things around those, so that as a portfolio, you are able to be incredibly successful and you don't have to face the politics of what's going to happen to you in the future. Because you have to de-risk yourself from that as well. Okay, today you survive, you land up, you get another job. How do you know 3 years from now the same thing is not going to happen? Then what next? So I think it's very, very important for people to step back and say, should I move from a linear career to a portfolio career? And if I want to move to a portfolio career, what kind of a portfolio should I be picking and choosing? For example, should I be coming and telling Gurpreet that I can come and help you re-architect, for example, your solution set which you're taking to the market around cybersecurity, AI, and quantum cryptography? Maybe I'll spend a day and a half with you in a week. And you'll say, yeah, looking at your credentials, fantastic. If you can come in and help me to put the overall architecture of what as an organization I should be doing, which technologies, which solutions, which partnerships, that's going to help me accelerate movement. And by the way, handle a couple of the partnerships going forward as well. So I don't need you full time, but you're going to help me save 20% of my bandwidth because that's where it's going today. You'll be happy to pay the guy something, not as much as what he was getting full time. And likewise, he can go to 3-4 other people and offer his skills. Maybe the guy has great communication skills. He can go and join a school and say, I'd like to run a course in communications and take that up as a part of his portfolio. Some of the people have great hobbies. They know pottery, they know singing, they know dancing.
You do podcasting.
Do podcasting. That's a real good one. So choose a portfolio career. So I would say, number one, don't get demotivated. Come and share with your family. Sit around the dining table. Brainstorm. Have an open discussion. Your family is your biggest champion. They are your biggest fans. If nobody in the world believes in you, they do. So you know there is somebody who believes in you, right? Listen to them, work with them. Don't get disheartened. And I have known colleagues and friends who have gone through this unfortunate circumstance and who have come and told me, Manoj, what really made me come out of this was the solid support that my family gave me. I said, when we came home, I came home and I told my family, this is what's happened. We were planning to go on a vacation. He said, the first thing that my daughter told me was, Dad, let's postpone the vacation. We can do it another time. And everyone started turning around and saying, what are the things that we can do to kind of cut costs? Because we know that the next few months might be difficult. Who does that? It's only your family. So trust your family, trust your own skills, believe in yourself.
So one of the things you said, or what you meant, was the fundamental shift in the approach, in the way we look at career. It should not be unidirectional. It should more be an entrepreneurial approach. Rather than me risking putting all my eggs in one basket, in the age of AI, I should rather look at being a fractional contributor to multiple organizations.
Absolutely. I'll give you a real example. I know of so many firms, for example, which are focused on the fintech sector. And they keep coming to me and saying, Manoj, do you know any good sales guy in Mumbai? Because Mumbai, as you know, is the financial capital of India, because we think that our product has a great product market fit, and that's the right market. And I tell them, look, if you go look for a full-time guy, you're not going to be able to afford that person. And if the person is happily settled wherever they are not going to move out. So if I come across a great fractional guy, I'm going to pass that person your way. So there are opportunities. I just think that people many times just don't want to get out of, the set ways in which they have been working all these years. But my message to everyone is, guys, step back, relook, re-architect. There are newer ways of looking at your career. If you're looking for X dollars a month, You don't need to get it from a single paycheck. You can get the X dollars through 5 different gigs that you do. X1 plus X2 plus X3 plus X4 plus X5 could be greater than X that you were originally getting. Remember that.
And it's easy to replace. In case of one contract breaking,
Absolutely.
you can very quickly. It's like running a deal.
It's
right?
like running a deal.
Having a pipeline.
Absolutely. And you de-risk. Like it's like turning around and saying, oops, I didn't make my variable pay this quarter. That's okay. Right? But you still got
The base
4 or
salary.
5 or, out of those gigs. And you know in advance, right, this gig is changing and you keep looking. And then you're in the market. And remember, one of the traits I spoke about sales is right, their ability to connect. So you're networking all the time. You're a sales guy. You got emotional intelligence. You're building the network. You're strengthening that. The flywheel effect will come into play. Why are you forgetting that? In the early days, we used to call it the network effect. Isn't it?
That's right. So, Manoj, this is a bit more of a personal guidance I need from you while being on this podcast. As a business, and it is for any entrepreneur running out there, running the businesses, how can we look at scaling? Because starting a business is relatively easier, I would call it, because you know what you're getting into. But when your business reach a certain threshold, scaling becomes a challenge. You always end up becoming and operating like a founder. Now you have to step up from being a founder to being a CEO, building systems. How do you coach people like me or any other entrepreneur out there listening to this podcast?
First of all, I think, Gurpreet, the question is a fantastic question. I know it's a personal question, but it applies to lots of entrepreneurs as well. And let me do a plug-in. And my plug-in is that I always recommend to organizations that take a coach. Because you can get from 0 to 1 on your own. You can get a few logos, you have a network, you have connections, you get those customers in, but now you need to scale the business. Getting a coach helps a lot. Many organizations think that getting a coach is unnecessary expense. They want to get a coach who can help them win business. Now, that's not a coach, right? That's a broker. So they kind of get confused. I got a coach, but this guy is going to help me get 3 deals from the market because he knows 5 guys. It's not that. So you use the right word, that how can somebody coach? And I think the fundamental thing in coaching always begins with culture. In fact, even before product market fit, what is very, very important is building the culture of the organization. And therefore, the culture is what you can magnify from 1 to 100. Anyone who's coming and helping you is doing just that. What is the culture you have built? And around that culture and the way you are, how do you make sure you get the best out of it and then you scale and take it from 10 to 100 or 20 to 100 or whatever you want to do? From culture, you come to strategy, because the strategy obviously emanates from the culture of the organization and the vision. And then you come to structure. And I think one of the places where I find entrepreneurs struggle is in terms of structuring right. They have a few people, few co-founders with whom they've started the business. So they look at those co-founders and try and figure out, okay, what do I do with this guy? What can that guy do? So we put people before structure. You need to put structure and then people. And I think that is where a coach like me would come in and look at the organization and say, are we structured for scale? And if we are not structured for scale, let's do that. And secondly, let's people the structure. Let's get the right people to take us in the direction we want to go. From there follows the process. I find that many organizations have not built the operating system. They have not gone and built the fundamental infrastructure around which they can scale. They either don't have the right sales organization, or they don't have the processes, or they don't have the systems, or they don't have the frameworks. So all of these foundations have to be put in place in an unemotional fashion. Where are founders spending a lot of their time? I'm sorry to say that, and pardon me for my candidness. They're more worried about where do I get my funding rather than about validation of their business. They are spending time in doing lots of things which they should not be doing, rather than going and building the muscle of the organization in terms of getting the people structure right. They don't trust people because as founders, you're 3 or 4 guys or 2 guys or one individual. It's difficult to go trust somebody else. Though you might have been a professional in your past life, you say, no, this Gurpreet was a great guy, but Gurpreet is not replicable. I can't get a Gurpreet in the market, so I'm going to do everything on my own. It becomes hard. That's why I said get the culture right. Culture of empowerment, culture of enablement, building a learning culture. It's important. Get the culture right, and people will help you to scale your dream and take it to the next level. I think it's also incredibly important to understand that when you get a team, and I know a lot of people who I coach, they're very happy to build teams. I spend enormous time with them in convincing them that building teams is important, but who's going to enable them? Who is going to skill them? Who's going to train them? How much time have you got a fresh guy in, you hired laterally, you expect the guy to go achieve his numbers. At the end of first quarter, magic is not going to happen. You have to invest time in terms of training and skilling people. People are not doing that. Then I find that customers, founders are not spending enough time in really understanding deep down what is the customer's real need. We're only running around product market fit. All that is fine. But do you really understand the customer's pain? Do you really understand where the shoe is pinching? Do you have that curiosity to learn and to know? So I think just professionally, you need to go back to fundamentals and scale those fundamentals with the help of a professional, with the help of a coach, hiring the right team, enabling them, empowering them. I find many entrepreneurs don't want to empower their leaders. Or you want to give a special deep dive discount, you come to me, I'm the founder. I will tell you whether I want to do the deal or not. Why don't you create an empowerment matrix and give it? And give the same empowerment as if you were giving it to yourself. Can you do it with the leaders that you hire? Very hard to answer that question.
Indeed.
But that's what coaching is all about. Have a good coach, and that's going to really help you to go on that journey of success.
So Manoj, on that note, on the coaching part, I was fortunate enough to watch one of your old archives, a video archive library on LinkedIn about 5 years ago during COVID times. And I was building my systems integration practice, the cybersecurity practice. And you mentioned about heterogeneity. It is radically opposite to what market is preaching you to build platforms, bring people more on all the Palo Altos or Trend Micros or CrowdStrikes or EMCs or Ciscos. Your approach was very different. Explain that a little bit more, but however, I did find it very useful and I have implemented it thoroughly and really, really helped me. But I want to know a little bit more and deep dive into that concept per se.
So Gurpreet, I can send you a check for royalty on that.
By all means, by all means.
Well, I've been on the other side for many years of my life, and my whole goal was to convince people to be on homogeneous platforms, to be on homogeneous technologies. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants to look after themselves. And therefore, I figured out that if you're on the other side, because I began my career working for systems integrators, my real value to my customers came if I offered them best of breed. And my lesson of life has taught me that being heterogeneous allows you to have, quote unquote, what all of us love, account control. Because it happens inevitably because even at the OEMs, partners end, people change, new leaders come in. You may have great relationship with the current set of guys, but the new set of guys come in and they say, hey, Gurpreet is working on this, top 10 accounts, in our country or in our geography, and we should actually be having a direct relationship with them rather than via a partner. And the moment they go in front of the customer and say, look, we value you significantly, we're now going to work directly with you, the customer may love you, but will say, look, at the end of the day, I'm using the technology of OEM A, B, or C. they're offering me a direct partnership. So respectfully, I'd like to work with them. Yeah, of course, I'll take some services from you, but really a major part of my relationship is going to shift. Heterogeneity is critical for the success of a systems integrator. And a lot of systems integrators have to work very hard to be able to build, quote unquote, what I call their operating stack. Because you need to make sure you get these different technologies, you set up a lab, you test them, you get a few bright engineers to kick the tires, make sure that everything works with everything, you know which version of firmware works with which patch of the software of another technology provider. So you need to make sure that everything continues to work. And that's what the guys who offer homogeneous platforms talk about. Right? Come to me because there's going to be no failure. There's really resilience. We are spending billions of dollars. We're going to protect the customer's investments. Now, we need to step in and do a little bit of work to make sure that the sticky glue really sticks. So that's the only way you can make margins. That's the only way in which you will have account control. That is the only way in which you can protect your downside, lest some OEM becomes hungry or lest there are changes at the other end which potentially could impact your business. I'm seeing this, Gurpreet, happening in real time today with some of the firms that I work with, that their largest customers have been usurped by the OEM. You can imagine what's happening to their quarterly results and their ability to sustain their business. It's hard. I'm glad you didn't make that mistake.
And also it helps customers to get an extra layer of support from those partners. You get an extra set of eyes to look after your security stack or IT stack or your problems, to get a vendor agnostic opinion of what's the right way to solve a problem.
And we all know that, right? Your internal firewalls, external firewalls, if they are from different vendors, you are far more protected rather than having everything through a single vendor. And like this, this applies to many different technologies and many different solution paths within a customer's existing environment. The customer gets the best if you deliver best of breed.
Absolutely. So Manoj, now since you've accomplished almost everything in your career, you've been a sales rep, you've been a sales leader, you've been directors, you've coached bigger organization, you have a strong corporate social responsibility point of view as well. What motivates you now? What lies ahead?
I think I see a tremendous opportunity in terms of guiding and coaching younger firms to scale. What took me decades to achieve, I think that based on my learnings and unlearnings, because that's what happens each time, I can help others achieve it in a much shorter duration, if you will. So, how do I take my learnings? How am I able to, in a way, transmit those learnings to others who can then take them and move to the next level? Also help them become better professionals. And at the end of the day, people like me learned through brute experience. We have deep scars on the back. That's how we learned. Can I help somebody learn without getting the scars?
Or get less scars.
Or less scars, I hope. Much lesser scars. So certainly that's something which motivates me. I like to work with academia. I am a big votary of how can academia and industry come together? How can we achieve great things together? I find a reluctance on both sides. Everyone talks the talk, but making them walk the talk is a bit difficult. But even if I can help achieve some bit of it, that would be, I would say, redeeming. In my own life and career during the active years, I was blessed and fortunate to have been able to help create tens of thousands of professionals in the networking space, in the area of storage technologies. And I therefore felt that there's a huge opportunity going forward, particularly when you look at AI and what it is doing in terms of reinventing almost every aspect of human existence. Can we do something together by getting academia and industry so that we can create new opportunities, new jobs, new roles, and hopefully help future generations create better livelihoods and lives for themselves. So that is my hope. That is the journey I'm on.
That's fantastic, Manoj. So Manoj, we do this rapid fire as a part of the format. What is that one book that has changed your thought process?
You'll be surprised with my answer. I am spiritually agnostic, but the one book which made a big difference to me was the Bhagavad Gita. And I read that book at a very, very early age. And I think that left an indelible impact on my mind. And therefore, a lot of my work life has also been guided by the learnings and teachings in that specific book.
Awesome. And then what's that one quote that has always inspired you?
Well, it is try harder.
Right. Any philosophy behind it?
Well, I guess each time you do something, you know that there's something which is left undone as well. And therefore, my motto to myself is just try harder. You can never achieve 100% of what you want. So just keep trying harder.
Gotcha. And any business leader you follow?
I follow lots of leaders, no one in specific. From all the managers whom I've had the honor and opportunity of working with, I have learned a lot. So I would say I don't have one leader that I follow. Every leader that I've worked with, every leader that I watch, I always try and pick at least one good thing from that person.
Any mentor you would like to single out?
Well, no specific mentor. I've looked at every leader as a mentor. So I think the mentoring is more in terms of circumstance, in terms of opportunity, in terms of the learning that has come my way.
Gotcha.
And that's the way I have looked at it.
And what is Manoj Chugh doing when he's not working? We all know you work very hard.
Well, I think I like to follow the news. I like to follow politics. I like to keep myself abreast with current affairs. That motivates me. I love it, to know what the hell is happening around me. So if I'm not working, I'm at least trying to keep myself aware of my environments and my surroundings.
That's awesome. Now, a closing remark from you. If you had to leave one guiding principle for the next generation of leaders, what would that be?
I would say it is around belief. Believe in yourself. Believe in your customers. Believe in your partners. For me, belief is the biggest sales multiplier. And that is my message to each and every professional. Start by believing in yourself, and you will never fail.
That's amazing, Manoj. Thank you very much for joining us here. And we really, really enjoyed this whole conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gurpreet. I have enjoyed the conversation. I have enjoyed the time that we've had together. Thank you very much, and wish you bon voyage and safe journey.
Thank you very much. Cheers.